Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Devastator, watching the blue marble of Earth grow larger on his main screen. His forearms crossed behind his back as he studied the primitive planet with cold satisfaction. After 30 years of conquest across the galaxy, this would be his easiest victory yet. The massive Zephyrian fleet stretched across space like a metal storm cloud. 10,000 warships of various sizes floated in perfect formation, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that could turn mountains into glass. Each ship carried enough firepower to level a city, and Vextar commanded them all. "Sir, we have completed our scan of the target world," reported his intelligence officer, Lieutenant Crix. The young Zephyrian's purple skin gleamed under the bridge lights as he consulted his datapad. The inhabitants call themselves humans. They appear to be a single species with minimal technological advancement. Vextar's thin lips curved into what passed for a smile among his people. "Tell me more about these humans." "They have only recently developed nuclear weapons, Admiral. Their space travel is limited to chemical rockets that barely reach their own moon. We detected no energy shields, no plasma weapons, and no faster-than-light capability. They still use radio waves for communication." "Radio waves?" Vextar laughed, a harsh sound that echoed across the bridge. "My ancestors were using quantum communication when these creatures were still living in caves." "How many ships do they have in orbit?" "None, sir. They have some primitive satellites and a small space station. But no military vessels in space at all. Their entire defensive capability appears to be ground-based missiles with nuclear warheads." Vextar nodded with satisfaction. Nuclear weapons were impressive for such a young species, but they might as well throw rocks at his fleet. His ship's energy shields could absorb nuclear blasts without even dimming the lights. "Population?" he asked. "Approximately 8 billion humans spread across 7 continents. They have multiple governments that appear to fight among themselves regularly. Our analysts believe they will surrender quickly once they understand our superior firepower." The Admiral walked to the massive viewing window that dominated the front of his bridge. Earth hung before them like a jewel, white clouds swirling over blue oceans and brown continents. It would make a beautiful addition to the Zephyrian Empire. "Admiral," called his communications officer, "shall I broadcast the surrender demand?" "Yes, use the standard ultimatum. Give them 1 full rotation of their planet to respond." The communications officer worked at his console for several minutes, translating the message into the primitive human languages his computers had decoded from their radio transmissions. Finally, he looked up and nodded. "Message transmitted on all human communication frequencies, Admiral." Vextar smiled again as he imagined the panic spreading across Earth. He had delivered the same ultimatum to 47 worlds before this one. Some surrendered immediately. Others fought briefly before realizing the hopelessness of their situation. All eventually knelt before the might of the Zephyrian Empire. The message was simple and direct. "People of Earth, you are now under the authority of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. You have 24 hours to surrender unconditionally. Lay down all weapons, gather your leaders in your capital cities, and prepare for occupation. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your world. You have been warned. Tactical assessment. Commander Zex," Vextar ordered his chief tactical officer. Commander Zex, a veteran of many campaigns, pulled up holographic displays showing Earth's defense capabilities. "Sir, based on our scans, we could conquer this planet with a single battle group. Their most powerful weapons could not penetrate our weakest ship's shields. I recommend deploying only 500 vessels for the actual invasion. The rest can remain in reserve." "No," Vextar said firmly. "We use the full fleet. I want these humans to see the true power of the Empire. When word spreads to other primitive worlds, they will surrender without a fight. Fear is our greatest weapon." The bridge crew nodded in agreement. They had all heard stories of worlds that surrendered the moment they detected Zephyrian ships approaching their systems. The reputation of the Imperial fleet traveled faster than their ships did. "Sir, we are receiving multiple transmissions from the planet," the communications officer reported. "They appear to be confused." "Confused?" Vextar raised an eyebrow. "The humans are asking if this is some kind of joke or entertainment broadcast. Many of their governments are demanding proof that we actually exist. Some are calling it an elaborate hoax." Vextar's eyes narrowed. "Show them proof, sir." "Target one of their moons with a low-power plasma burst. Something visible but harmless. Let them see what real weapons look like." "Admiral," Commander Zex interrupted, "their moon affects their planet's oceans. Destroying it could cause massive flooding. I said low power, Commander. Just enough to leave a visible crater they can see with their primitive telescopes. The tactical officer worked at his controls. A moment later, one of the fleet's smaller destroyers fired a thin beam of green energy toward Earth's moon. The beam struck the lunar surface with a flash of light visible even from Earth. Message sent. Admiral, the tactical officer reported. Within minutes, the communications officer was receiving frantic transmissions from Earth. Human voices in dozens of languages filled the bridge speakers, most speaking too fast for the translation computers to keep up. They believe us now, Vextar observed with satisfaction. Fear has a way of clearing the mind. He settled into his command chair, a massive throne-like seat that elevated him above the rest of the bridge crew. From here he could see everything. The holographic displays showing his fleet's positions, the tactical screens monitoring Earth's military bases, and the main viewer showing the planet itself. 23 hours and 47 minutes remaining, announced the navigation officer. Vextar closed his eyes and began planning the invasion. The humans would likely try to negotiate, offering tribute or partial surrender. They always did. But the Zephyrian Empire did not negotiate with primitives. Total surrender was the only acceptable outcome. He thought about how he would organize the occupation. The humans would make decent slaves for the mining operations on the outer worlds. Their planet had abundant water and good soil for growing food. Earth would become a supply depot for future campaigns deeper into this spiral arm of the galaxy. Opening his eyes, he looked at Earth again. Soon those blue oceans would reflect the hulls of Zephyrian ships. Those green continents would be covered with Imperial cities. And those 8 billion humans would learn what it meant to serve the Empire. Admiral, his second-in-command approached cautiously. The fleet commanders are requesting permission to begin charging their primary weapons. Granted. But maintain defensive positions only. I want these humans to spend their last free hours staring at our guns. As the order went out across the fleet, 10,000 warships began powering up their main weapon systems. The energy buildup created a subtle glow around each vessel, turning the dark fleet into a constellation of threatening stars. Vextar smiled as he watched the display. By this time tomorrow, Earth would belong to the Empire and he would add another victory to his perfect record. The humans had no idea what was coming for them. He had no idea how wrong he was. Dr. Sarah Chen was drinking her third cup of coffee when the message arrived. The radio telescope at Arecibo had been quiet all night, picking up nothing more interesting than background radiation from distant galaxies. Then suddenly, every speaker in the control room crackled to life with a voice speaking perfect English. People of Earth, you are now under the authority of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. Sarah nearly dropped her coffee mug. She looked around the control room, expecting to see one of her colleagues playing a prank, but everyone else looked just as shocked as she felt. You have 24 hours to surrender unconditionally, the voice continued. Lay down all weapons, gather your leaders in your capital cities, and prepare for occupation. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your world. You have been warned. The message repeated in Spanish, then French, then Chinese, then dozens of other languages. Sarah's hands shook as she reached for the emergency phone that connected directly to the Pentagon. This is Dr. Chen at Arecibo, she said when someone answered. We just received what appears to be a message from an alien fleet demanding Earth's surrender. There was a long pause. Ma'am, are you feeling all right? Have you been working too many hours? I'm completely serious. The message is still broadcasting. I'm recording everything. Another pause. Hold the line, Dr. Chen. While she waited, Sarah watched her instruments. The message was definitely coming from somewhere near Jupiter. The signal strength suggested a massive transmitter, far more powerful than anything humans had ever built. Dr. Chen? A new voice came on the line, deeper and more serious. This is General Morrison. We need you to send us everything you have on this transmission immediately. Yes, sir. But, General, about 20 minutes ago we detected a massive energy discharge aimed at the moon. If this is real, we know about the moon, Doctor. Just send us the data. The line went dead. Sarah stared at the phone, then at her instruments, then at the large screen showing the moon through their optical telescope. There was definitely a new crater on the lunar surface, still glowing faintly with heat. Her phone rang again, but this time it was not the Pentagon. Dr. Chen, this is Director Williams from the UEDC. We need you to come to coordinates I'm about to give you. Right now. The UEDC? I've never heard of. United Earth Defense Council. We exist for situations exactly like this. Pack nothing. A helicopter is already on the way to your location. Sarah found herself in a military helicopter 30 minutes later, flying over the Atlantic Ocean toward coordinates she had never seen on any map. The pilot, who wore no insignia, said nothing during the entire 3-hour flight. They landed at what looked like an oil drilling platform in the middle of the ocean. But as Sarah stepped off the helicopter, she noticed details that did not make sense. The metal beneath her feet felt different, almost warm to the touch. The walls of the platform buildings had a subtle shimmer like heat waves on a summer day. "Dr. Chen, welcome to Station Alpha." A woman in a black suit approached her. "I'm Director Williams. Thank you for coming so quickly." "I didn't exactly have a choice," Sarah replied. "What is this place?" "The answer to questions you haven't thought to ask yet. Follow me." Director Williams led her into an elevator that descended much farther than any oil platform should go. The walls of the elevator shaft were not made of normal metal. They seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and Sarah could see geometric patterns etched into their surface. "How deep are we going?" Sarah asked. "Deep enough," Williams replied. "Dr. Chen, what I'm about to show you is classified at the highest possible level. You will sign agreements that you will never speak of this to anyone outside this organization. But right now, with alien warships in our solar system, you need to understand what humanity really is." The elevator stopped, and the doors opened onto a vast underground chamber. Sarah stepped out and gasped. The room stretched for hundreds of meters in every direction, filled with technology that clearly was not human in origin. Massive curved screens displayed star maps showing the positions of the alien fleet. Workers in white coats moved between control panels that seemed to float in midair without any visible support. "This is impossible," Sarah whispered. "We don't have technology like this." "You're right. We don't." Williams walked toward the center of the chamber, where a large circular platform held what looked like a 3-dimensional hologram of the solar system. "This technology belongs to the species that lived on Earth before us." Sarah's legs felt weak. "Before us?" "The architects. They built installations like this one all over the planet millions of years ago. Then they disappeared, leaving everything behind. We've been studying their technology for decades, but we never understood its true purpose until today." Williams touched a control panel, and the hologram zoomed in on Earth. Sarah could see geometric patterns covering every continent, patterns that matched the architecture surrounding them. "The architects weren't just the previous inhabitants of Earth," Williams continued. "They seeded technology throughout this entire galaxy. We've found evidence of their installations on dozens of worlds. But Earth is special. Earth is the key. The key to what? To inheriting their legacy. Dr. Chen, the human race has been selected. We are the inheritors. This alien fleet that arrived today isn't just a random invasion. It's a test." Sarah sank into a nearby chair that molded itself to fit her body perfectly. "A test for what?" "To see if we're ready to become the galaxy's guardians." The architects built a vast network of defenses throughout space, but they needed a species to activate and control it. A species that could handle the responsibility of protecting younger civilizations from exactly the kind of empire that just threatened us. Williams gestured to the screens around them. Sarah could see that similar installations were coming online all over the world. Hidden chambers beneath major cities were opening. Ancient technology was awakening after millions of years of dormancy. "The systems are responding to the threat," Williams explained. "The architect technology recognizes the alien fleet as hostile and is preparing to defend Earth. But it needs human authorization to activate fully." "What kind of authorization?" "A choice. The same choice every species faces when they reach this level of development. Do we use power to conquer and destroy, or do we use it to protect and nurture?" The architects chose protection. They became guardians instead of conquerors. Now they're offering us the same choice. Sarah looked at the countdown timer floating above the holographic solar system. 18 hours remained until the alien deadline. What happens if we refuse? The technology goes dormant again. Earth falls to the invasion. Humanity becomes slaves to the Zephyrian Empire. And eventually someone else gets the chance to inherit what we rejected. And if we accept, we become something new, something more than human. We inherit the responsibility of protecting this galaxy from exactly the kind of evil that's threatening us right now. Sarah studied the displays around her. She could see the alien fleet clearly now. Thousands of ships armed with weapons that could destroy planets. Against any normal civilization, they would be unstoppable. But humanity, it seemed, was not normal. How long do we have to decide? William smiled for the first time since Sarah had met her. We already decided, Dr. Chen. The moment we chose to protect our world instead of surrendering to conquerors, we made our choice. The architects knew we would. That's why they selected us. The countdown timer showed 17 hours and 32 minutes remaining. Earth was ready to give its answer. 6 hours before the alien deadline, the ground beneath Tokyo began to vibrate. At first, seismologists thought it was an earthquake. The tremors were too regular, too purposeful. Every building in the city swayed in perfect rhythm, as if the earth itself was breathing. Dr. Kenji Tanaka was working late in his office on the 42nd floor of a skyscraper when his computer screen flickered and went black. Then new text appeared, written in symbols he had never seen before. Yet somehow he could read them perfectly. The hour of awakening has come. Descend. Every elevator in the building activated simultaneously, but instead of going up or down to the floors marked on their buttons, they all descended past the basement, past the subway tunnels, past the foundation of the city itself. Dr. Tanaka found himself in an elevator with a dozen other confused office workers. The display showed floor numbers that should not exist: B47, B53, B61. Finally, at B70 the elevator stopped and the doors opened. They stepped into a vast underground chamber that stretched beyond the reach of their eyes. The walls were covered in the same geometric patterns that had appeared on Dr. Tanaka's computer screen. But these patterns were moving, shifting and flowing like living things made of light. Welcome, inheritors, a voice spoke directly into their minds, not through their ears. You have been chosen to witness the awakening. Around the world, similar scenes played out in every major city. In New York, the subway tunnels led to chambers that had been hidden beneath Manhattan for millennia. In London, ancient Roman foundations cracked open to reveal corridors that descended into the Earth's depths. In Cairo, passages opened beneath the pyramids that led to installations older than human civilization. Sarah Chen stood in the command center beneath the Atlantic Ocean, watching reports flood in from every continent. Director Williams monitored dozens of screens showing underground facilities coming online from Beijing to Buenos Aires. They're all connected. Williams explained to Sarah as holographic displays showed a three-dimensional map of Earth. Every major landmass has installations like this one. They form a network that spans the entire planet. Sarah watched as energy readings spiked across the globe. What are they doing? Preparing for activation, but they need something from us first. They need to understand who we really are. On the screens, they could see humans exploring the newly revealed chambers. Dr. Tanaka in Tokyo was not alone. Thousands of people had been drawn to the installations by messages they could not ignore. Teachers, engineers, doctors, artists, farmers, students, people from every walk of life found themselves standing in chambers filled with technology beyond their understanding. But as Sarah watched, she noticed something remarkable. Despite their confusion and fear, the humans were not running away. They were staying. They were trying to understand. They were helping each other figure out what they were seeing. In the Tokyo installation, Dr. Tanaka approached what looked like a control panel made of flowing light. When he touched it, images filled his mind. He saw Earth as it was millions of years ago, covered with cities built by beings that looked almost human, but were clearly something else. The architects. He saw them building the installations, preparing Earth for the species that would come after them. He saw them testing dozens of younger civilizations, waiting for one that would prove worthy of their legacy, and he saw why they had chosen humanity. The architects had not been looking for the strongest species, or the smartest, or the most advanced. They had been looking for something else entirely. They had been looking for a species that could choose to protect instead of destroy, even when destruction would be easier. Across the planet, humans were receiving the same visions. They saw the history of the galaxy, the rise and fall of empires, the endless cycle of conquest and destruction that had dominated space for millions of years. They saw how the architects had broken that cycle by choosing to become guardians instead of conquerors, and they saw the test that was happening right now. The Zephyrian fleet was not just invading Earth, it was the final examination. Would humanity choose to fight back with the intent to destroy? Or would they choose to protect not just themselves, but everyone who might face similar threats in the future. Sarah watched as the energy readings from the installations continued to climb. What happens when they reach full power? That depends on us, Williams replied. The architects built defensive systems that could protect this entire galaxy from threats like the Zephyrian Empire. But they require conscious control by a species that understands the responsibility involved. And if we're not ready, then the systems shut down and wait for the next species to evolve to this point. Earth gets conquered, humanity becomes extinct, and the galaxy remains vulnerable to empires like the Zephyrians. Sarah looked at the countdown timer. 4 hours and 17 minutes remained. In installations around the world, humans were making contact with the architect technology, not operating it, not controlling it, but communicating with it. The systems were learning about humanity by observing how they responded to this incredible situation. Dr. Tanaka discovered that he could ask the installation questions simply by thinking them. He learned that the architects had evolved on Earth 65 million years ago, during the time humans called the Age of Dinosaurs. They had reached the stars, built an empire, and then made the choice to abandon conquest in favor of protection. They had become the galaxy's immune system, stopping aggressive empires before they could spread their destruction to innocent worlds. But they had grown old and tired. They needed successors. Why us? Dr. Tanaka thought. The answer came as a flood of images showing human history, but not the wars and conflicts that dominated the history books. Instead, he saw moments of choice. Humans who chose to help strangers instead of ignoring them. Humans who chose to build instead of destroy. Humans who chose to protect the weak instead of exploiting them. He saw firefighters running into burning buildings. He saw doctors working without pay in poor countries. He saw teachers staying late to help struggling students. He saw ordinary people making extraordinary choices to put others before themselves. The architects had been watching humanity for thousands of years, waiting to see if they would develop the wisdom to handle incredible power. And despite all their flaws, despite their wars and mistakes, humans had shown one crucial quality: the ability to choose compassion over cruelty when it mattered most. Around the world, the installations were reaching full power. The geometric patterns on the walls pulsed brighter, and Sarah could feel something building. Energy beyond human comprehension was gathering beneath the planet's surface, waiting for permission to act. The systems are ready, Williams announced. All installations report full activation capability. Sarah looked at the main screen, where the alien fleet hung in space like a sword over Earth's head. 10,000 ships, each one capable of destroying cities. Against any normal planet, they would be unstoppable, but Earth was no longer normal. What do we do? Sarah asked. Williams smiled. We do what humans do best. We protect our home. The countdown timer showed 3 hours and 41 minutes remaining, but Sarah realized that the real countdown had already ended. The moment humans chose to stand together instead of surrendering to fear, they had passed the architect's test. Now they just had to show the galaxy what that choice meant. The installations around the world pulsed in unison, and for the first time in 65 million years, the architect's legacy began to awaken fully. Earth was about to become something new, something the Zephyrian Empire was completely unprepared for. Admiral Vextar checked his chronometer with satisfaction. The deadline had passed exactly 17 minutes ago, and not a single transmission had come from Earth offering surrender. The humans were apparently too primitive to understand the hopelessness of their situation. Fleet status report, he commanded. All ships report ready for bombardment. Admiral, replied Commander Jex. Primary weapons charged and targeting solutions locked. Vextar nodded and turned to face the main viewer. Earth hung before them, blue and peaceful, completely unaware that its destruction was about to begin. He had given the humans their chance. Now they would face the consequences of their defiance. Begin the attack. Target their major population centers first. I want the survivors to understand the price of resistance. Yes, Admiral. The order went out across the fleet. 10,000 warships turned their weapons toward Earth and fired simultaneously. Streams of plasma energy, quantum torpedoes, and particle beams raced toward the planet at nearly the speed of light. Enough firepower to crack continents blazed through space in a display of destruction that had ended countless civilizations. Vextar watched with cold satisfaction as the weapons approached their target. In seconds, Earth's largest cities would be reduced to glowing craters. The human species would learn that the Zephyrian Empire did not make empty threats. The attack reached Earth's atmosphere and simply disappeared. Vextar blinked, certain his eyes were deceiving him. The massive barrage of energy weapons had vanished as if they had never existed. No explosions. No destruction. No impact at all. Weapon status. He barked. "Sir, all weapons fired successfully," the tactical officer reported, confusion clear in his voice. "But sensors show no impact on the target." "That's impossible. Run diagnostics on all weapon systems." While his crew scrambled to understand what had happened, Vextar stared at Earth. The planet looked exactly the same as it had before the attack. No signs of damage. No fires, no destruction. It was as if his fleet's weapons had struck nothing more substantial than empty space. "Admiral," the sensor operator called out urgently, "I'm detecting massive energy readings from the planet's surface." "What kind of energy readings?" "Unknown, sir. But the power output is, sir, its reading is higher than our entire fleet's maximum capacity." Vextar felt a chill run through his body. That was impossible. No planet, no matter how advanced, could generate more power than 10,000 warships. His sensors had to be malfunctioning. "Admiral!" The communications officer's voice cracked with fear. "We're receiving a transmission from Earth. Put it on speakers." The voice that filled the bridge did not sound human. It spoke in pure mathematical concepts that bypassed language entirely, downloading meaning directly into their minds. "We are the inheritors. You have 3 seconds to retreat beyond this system's heliosphere. Comply or be removed." Vextar's mind reeled. The voice carried knowledge that made his brain hurt to process. Concepts of space and time that his species had never imagined. Technologies that made his weapons seem like stone knives. "Inheritors?" he whispered. "Inheritors of what?" The answer came as another wave of information that struck his consciousness like a physical blow. He saw visions of Earth's true history, the architects, the network of installations spanning the galaxy, the selection of humanity as the new guardians of space, and he saw what that meant for his empire. "Sir, what are your orders?" Commander Zex asked, but his voice sounded distant and afraid. Vextar looked at the countdown that had appeared on every screen throughout his ship. 3 seconds. The humans had given him 3 seconds to retreat or face removal. His pride as a Zephyrian admiral warred with the growing terror in his chest. He had conquered 47 worlds. His fleet was the most powerful force in 3 galactic sectors. He could not retreat from a single primitive planet. "Fire again," he ordered. "All ships, maximum bombardment." Nothing could have survived our first attack. It must have been some kind of illusion. The fleet fired again. This time, Vextar watched the energy readings on Earth spike to levels that his instruments could barely measure. The planet's surface began to glow with geometric patterns visible from space. Lines of light connected every continent in a web of energy that pulsed with power beyond comprehension. And once again, his fleet's weapons simply vanished before reaching their target. 2 seconds remaining, the mathematical voice announced. Around Earth, space itself began to change. Reality twisted in ways that made Vextar's eyes water. The planet seemed to expand and contract simultaneously. Dimensions folded in on themselves. The very fabric of existence rippled like water. "Admiral, we need to retreat," Commander Zex shouted. "Whatever these humans have become, we cannot fight it." But Vextar's pride had turned into desperate fury. He had built his entire career on the principle that overwhelming force could solve any problem. He refused to accept that he had finally encountered something stronger than his fleet. "All ships ramming speed. If our weapons cannot touch them, we will destroy them with our ships themselves." It was the last order Admiral Vextar would ever give. The geometric patterns on Earth's surface pulsed once, brilliant and final. Space around the planet folded like origami. And when it unfolded again, the Zephyrian fleet was gone. Not destroyed, not scattered, simply absent as if they had never existed at all. In the command center beneath the Atlantic Ocean, Sarah Chen watched the displays with wonder and terror. The energy readings from the installations around the world were dropping back to standby levels. The geometric patterns fading. The crisis was over. "Where did they go?" she asked Director Williams. Williams consulted her instruments. According to the architect systems, the fleet has been relocated to a point approximately 12,000 light-years away, in empty space between galaxies. Relocated? Not destroyed? The architects were not conquerors, Dr. Chen. They were protectors. Even when dealing with aggressors like the Zephyrian Empire, they chose exile over extinction. Sarah thought about that. Somewhere in the vast emptiness between galaxies, Admiral Vextar and his 10,000 ships were trying to figure out what had happened to them. They would eventually find their way back to civilization, but it would take them decades or centuries. Long enough to think about their choices, long enough to perhaps choose differently. What happens now? Sarah asked. Now we learn. The architect systems are fully active, and they recognize humanity as the rightful inheritors. We have access to technology that spans the galaxy, defensive installations on thousands of worlds, knowledge that goes back millions of years. Williams gestured to the screens around them, which were now showing star maps Sarah had never seen before. Entire sectors of space marked with symbols indicating architect installations and the civilizations they protected. We're not just the guardians of Earth anymore, Dr. Chen. We're the guardians of everyone. Sarah looked at the star map and felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. Somewhere out there, other young civilizations were developing, growing, learning. Some would choose the path of conquest like the Zephyrians. Others would choose protection and cooperation. And when the conquerors came for the innocent, they would find humanity waiting for them. The age of human guardianship had begun. Earth had passed its test. But that was just the beginning. Now they had to prove they were worthy of the trust the architects had placed in them. Looking at the peaceful blue planet on the main screen, Sarah smiled. Despite all their flaws and mistakes, humans had been chosen for a reason. They had the one quality the architects valued most, the ability to choose protecting others over protecting themselves. It was a quality that would define humanity's role in the galaxy for millions of years to come. Admiral Vextar opened his eyes to find himself floating in the cold vacuum of space, protected only by his ship's emergency life support bubble. Around him, the scattered remnants of his once mighty fleet drifted in complete confusion. Some ships were spinning slowly, their crews struggling to regain control. Others fired their engines randomly, trying to understand where they were. But where they were was nowhere. The familiar constellations were gone. The galaxies his people had mapped and conquered were absent from the star charts. They floated in an empty void between galaxies, so far from home that the light from their own sun would not reach this place for millions of years. Admiral, his communications officer's voice crackled through the emergency comm system. We're receiving status reports from the fleet. All ships are accounted for, but no one understands how we got here. Vextar looked around at the vast emptiness surrounding his fleet. No planets, no stars, no civilizations to conquer. Just endless black space and the distant glow of galaxies so far away they looked like dim clouds. How long would it take us to return home? He asked quietly. At maximum speed, sir. Approximately 8,000 years. 8,000 years. Longer than his entire civilization had existed. Even if they found a way to travel faster than ever before, everyone they had ever known would be dead and forgotten by the time they returned. Vextar closed his eyes and remembered the mathematical voice that had spoken to him before the translation. It had shown him visions of Earth's true nature, the architects, the network of guardians spanning the galaxy, and humanity's new role as protectors instead of conquerors. He had spent 30 years building his reputation on fear and destruction. Now he understood that he had been nothing more than a test for something far greater than his empire had ever dreamed of becoming. Meanwhile, on Earth, life was slowly returning to normal. The underground installations had powered down and sealed themselves away. The geometric patterns on the continents had faded until they were invisible again. To most of the world's population, the entire alien invasion had lasted less than 24 hours and ended without explanation. But in government buildings and research facilities around the globe, select groups of humans were learning the truth about their planet's new role. Dr. Sarah Chen found herself appointed as Earth's first director of galactic affairs, a position she had never imagined could exist. Her office was located in the underground facility beneath the Atlantic Ocean, surrounded by architect technology that still seemed like magic despite her growing understanding of how it worked. Status report, she said to Director Williams, who had become her deputy. We've made contact with 17 civilizations that are under the protection of architect installations, Williams replied, consulting a holographic display. Most of them are young species like ourselves, just beginning to explore space. 3 are older civilizations that chose to become guardians rather than conquerors. Sarah nodded as she studied the star map floating above her desk. Each point of light represented a world under the protection of the Architect Network. Hundreds of planets, thousands of species, all depending on humanity to protect them from threats like the Zephyrian Empire. Any immediate threats? 2 developing situations. The Mordak Collective is expanding aggressively in Sector 7, and they're approaching the borders of 3 protected worlds. And we've detected what appears to be a Zephyrian advance fleet in Sector 12, probably looking for their missing armada. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders again. Every day brought new challenges, new decisions that could affect the lives of billions of beings she had never met and might never see. Recommendations? For the Mordak situation, we have 3 options. We can relocate their expansion fleet the same way we dealt with Admiral Vextar's armada. We can send them a warning through the quantum communication network, or we can attempt diplomatic contact. And the Zephyrian advance fleet? That's more complicated. If we relocate them, their empire will know something happened to their ships. They might send larger forces to investigate. But if we ignore them, they'll eventually find the protected worlds in that sector. Sarah considered the options. The Architect technology gave humanity incredible power, but it also came with the burden of using that power wisely. Every choice had consequences that could ripple across the galaxy. What would the Architects have done? William smiled. According to the historical records, they always tried diplomacy first. The Architects believed that most aggressive species could be taught to choose cooperation over conquest. Most species, some had to be relocated to empty sectors of space where they could only fight among themselves. But the Architects never destroyed anyone if they could avoid it. Sarah thought about Admiral Vextar and his fleet, floating in the void between galaxies. They had chosen conquest and violence, and now they were paying the price. But they were still alive, still capable of learning from their mistakes. Send a message to the Mordak Collective, she decided. Explain who we are and what we're protecting. Give them the same choice we gave the Zephyrians. Retreat peacefully or be relocated. And the Zephyrian advance fleet? Monitor them. If they approach any protected worlds, we'll intervene. But let's see if they're capable of learning from what happened to their main fleet. Over the following months, Sarah watched as humanity slowly adapted to its new role. The Mordak Collective, after receiving a demonstration of Architect technology, chose to redirect their expansion toward uninhabited systems. The Zephyrian advance fleet retreated to their own territory after detecting the energy signatures of activated Architect installations. Not every situation ended peacefully. Some aggressive species had to be relocated to distant parts of the galaxy, where they could no longer threaten innocent worlds. But with each decision, humanity grew wiser and more confident in their role as guardians. Dr. Kenji Tanaka, who had become Earth's primary liaison with the Architect technology, made an important discovery 6 months after the invasion. While studying the historical records, he found a message left specifically for humanity by the Architects. To the species we have chosen as our successors, the message began, know that you are not the first to inherit this responsibility, nor will you be the last. The guardianship of the galaxy is not a burden to be carried forever, but a gift to be passed on when you are ready. The message went on to explain that the Architects themselves had once been chosen by an even older species. The cycle of guardianship had continued for millions of years, with each generation of protectors eventually selecting and training their own successors. Your task is not to rule the galaxy, but to nurture it until it no longer needs guardians. Help the young species grow wise. Teach the aggressive ones to choose peace. And when the time comes, select those who will carry this responsibility after you. Sarah read the message in her office beneath the ocean, surrounded by technology that had protected the galaxy for longer than Earth had existed. She understood now that humanity's selection as the inheritors was not an end, but a beginning, somewhere in the galaxy. Perhaps on worlds that had not yet developed intelligent life, future guardians were waiting to be born, species that would eventually grow beyond the need for protection and become protectors themselves. And somewhere in the void between galaxies, Admiral Vextar was learning that there were things in the universe more powerful than weapons and more valuable than conquest. The age of human guardianship had begun, and with it, a new chapter in the galaxy's long journey toward wisdom and peace. Earth had become something it had never been before. Not just a world among worlds, but a beacon of hope for every species that chose cooperation over conflict, protection over predation. The future was vast and full of challenges, but for the first time in millions of years, the galaxy had guardians who understood that true strength came not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to protect, and that made all the difference.